In a small village nestled amidst the rolling green hills of Ghana's eastern region, lived a young girl named Afia. Born into a humble family, Afia grew up with the daily struggles that came with poverty. Her father worked tirelessly as a subsistence farmer, toiling from sunrise to sunset in the fields, while her mother, a skilled weaver, sold traditional kente cloth at the local market. Afia's home was a simple clay brick house, modest and worn, but filled with warmth and love. Despite the challenges of her upbringing, Afia was known throughout the village for her infectious optimism, her radiant smile, and her strong desire for education. She believed that education would be her way out of poverty, her ticket to a better life. Afia attended the local secondary school, which was a considerable walk from her home. Every morning, she'd rise before the first light of dawn, throw on her school uniform, a worn but carefully mended white blouse and blue skirt, and make her way to school along the dirt road that wound through the village and into the forest. She often carried her few textbooks tightly in her arms, as if they were treasures, and to Afia, they were. Her hunger for knowledge was insatiable. She dreamed of going to university, of becoming a teacher, and returning to her village to inspire other children who, like her, had little but hoped for much. But beyond her dreams of education, there was something else, someone else, that brought a spark of joy to Afia's life. That someone was Kwame. Kwame, tall and handsome with a lean athletic build, was the son of a local shopkeeper. Though not wealthy, his family was better off than most in the village. Kwame's father owned the only grocery store for miles, and this provided them with a stable, albeit modest, income. Kwame, like Afia, attended the local secondary school. He was well liked by his peers for his easy charm and quick wit, but there was something different about the way he looked at Afia. From the moment they had met in their second year, Kwame had been captivated by her intelligence and determination. At first, their connection was subtle, shared glances across the classroom, quick smiles exchanged in passing. But soon, those brief moments blossomed into something more. After school, they would often walk together, chatting about their dreams and ambitions. They had so much in common. Both wanted to leave the village behind and see the world beyond the hills of the eastern region. Kwame dreamed of opening his own business, something grand and successful that would bring wealth not only to his family, but also to the community. Afia, with her ever-burning passion for education, dreamed of changing lives. The bond between Afia and Kwame grew stronger with each passing year. They would often spend their afternoons studying together under a large mango tree on the outskirts of the village, where the cool shade offered them a break from the relentless sun. Beneath that tree, they shared their hopes for the future, their worries about their families, and their growing feelings for each other. It was under that same mango tree that they promised one another that once they graduated, they would get married and start building the life they had always talked about. Their love, in its youthful innocence, was the kind that villagers whispered about, both in admiration and envy. Many doubted that two young people from such humble beginnings could defy the odds and make something of themselves. But Afia and Kwame didn't care what others thought. They were determined to write their own story. When graduation day finally arrived, the village gathered to celebrate. It was a simple ceremony, held in the courtyard of the local school. But to Afia and Kwame, it felt like the beginning of everything. After years of dreaming, they were finally free to pursue their goals. And true to their word, shortly after graduation, they married in a small, joyous ceremony. The whole village came together to celebrate their love, a love that seemed unshakable, a beacon of hope in a place where dreams often withered under the weight of reality. Afia and Kwame's first few months of marriage were blissful. They rented a small house not far from the village center, And although their home was modest, it was filled with the warmth of their love. Afia continued to pursue her passion for education, even teaching local children in the evenings to help make ends meet. Kwame, ever ambitious, began working at his father's shop, learning the trade with the hopes of one day starting his own business. But as the days turned into months, the realities of married life began to set in. Money was tight, and the pressure to provide for their growing family weighed heavily on Kwame's shoulders. No longer were their conversations filled with dreams of the future. Instead, they were consumed by worries about how to make it through the present. Afia's small teaching venture barely brought in enough to cover their basic needs, and Kwame's work at the shop was not enough to sustain them long term. Tensions grew as the pressures of life mounted. The long hours Kwame worked to make ends meet left him tired and distant, and Afia, overwhelmed with running the household, grew frustrated with their struggles. The love that had once seemed unbreakable began to fray at the edges. Arguments became more frequent, and the future they had once imagined seemed to slip further from their grasp. It was during this difficult time that Afia discovered she was pregnant. At first, the news brought a flicker of hope. Perhaps the arrival of a child would bring them closer, would remind them of the love they had shared beneath the mango tree. But when Afia went for her first checkup, she received startling news. She was not just expecting one child, but twins. The news of twins brought both joy and fear. While they were thrilled at the thought of becoming parents, the reality of raising two children with their limited resources weighed heavily on their minds. Kwame, already stressed by the financial strain, felt the pressure even more acutely, while Afia tried to remain optimistic, though doubt lingered in her heart. As the months of Afia's pregnancy passed, the tensions between them deepened. Kwame worked longer hours, taking on more responsibility at his father's shop in a desperate attempt to provide for his growing family. Afia, her body heavy with the weight of the twins, struggled to keep up with her teaching and household duties. Their love, once their greatest strength, now felt fragile, strained by the burdens of adulthood they hadn't anticipated. When the twins were born, a boy named Kojo and a girl named Akua, their arrival was met with a mix of joy and exhaustion. Afia and Kwame were overjoyed to meet their beautiful children, but the sleepless nights, the constant demands of caring for newborns, and the ever-looming financial struggles began to drive them further apart. Their arguments, once about small things, became more frequent and more intense. Each blamed the other for their situation, and soon the love that had once brought them so much joy seemed to have disappeared entirely. In the end, after months of trying to hold on, they made the painful decision to separate. It was not a decision they took lightly, but neither could see a way forward together. They each took one child. Kwame took Akua to the city, where he had found a job that would help support them, and Afia stayed in the village with Kojo, where she continued to teach and care for her son. For years, the two halves of the family lived separate lives. Afia raised Kojo in the quiet village, instilling in him the same love of learning that had once driven her. Kojo, now a teenager, grew into a quiet, thoughtful young man, with his mother's intelligence and his father's quiet determination. He often asked about his father and the sibling he had never known. But Afia, still heartbroken by the separation, rarely spoke of them. Meanwhile, in the bustling city of Accra, Kwame worked tirelessly to provide a better life for Akua. The city was a far cry from the peaceful village where he had grown up, but Kwame had built a new life for himself and his daughter. Akua, now a lively and confident 16-year-old, had grown up surrounded by the vibrant energy of the city. She loved the hustle and bustle, the endless opportunities that the city seemed to offer. But like Kojo, she often wondered about the family she had left behind. Though Kwame and Afia had moved on in their own ways, neither had ever remarried. The pain of their separation and the loss of the love they had once shared was too great, and so they remained single, each focused on raising their child. One fateful day, Kojo and Aqua's worlds collided in a way that neither could have anticipated. It was during a cultural festival in Accra, where people from across the country gathered to celebrate their heritage. The festival was filled with music, dance, and vibrant colors, and it was there, among the crowds, that Kojo and Aqua's paths crossed for the first time. From the moment they met, there was an instant connection. Though they didn't know it at the time, the bond between them was unmistakable. Kojo, with his quiet nature and thoughtful eyes, was drawn to Akua's lively spirit and infectious energy. Akua, for her part, found herself intrigued by Kojo's calm demeanor and the sense of familiarity she couldn't quite place. Over the course of the festival, the two teenagers spent hours together, talking and laughing, as though they had known each other their whole lives. They shared stories of their families, their ambitions, and their dreams. Kojo spoke of his life in the village, describing the quiet simplicity of his days spent helping his mother and studying to one day follow in her footsteps as a teacher. Akua, on the other hand, shared stories of the city, the endless activity, the bustling streets, and her desire to someday pursue a career in business, much like her father had dreamed of. As they wandered through the festival, taking in the sights and sounds of traditional Ghanaian music and dance, they felt an inexplicable connection. It was more than just the shared experience of growing up in different parts of the same country. It was as though something deep within their souls recognized the other. Neither of them could put their finger on it, but the pull between them was undeniable. After that day at the festival, Kojo and Aqua couldn't stay away from each other. They exchanged phone numbers and began meeting regularly, both eager to explore the bond that had formed between them. Aqua would travel to the village on weekends to visit Kojo, finding comfort in the quiet beauty of the countryside. Kojo, in turn, made the journey to Accra to experience the excitement of city life, guided by Akua's infectious energy. The more time they spent together, the deeper their connection grew. They laughed at how similar they were, despite their different upbringings. They shared a love of learning and a desire to make something of their lives, and both carried a quiet sadness about the missing pieces of their family. They never spoke directly about the holes in their hearts, about the absent father or mother they had never truly known, but they felt it, an unspoken bond over the shared pain of their fragmented childhoods. It wasn't long before their friendship began to evolve into something more. Though neither of them admitted it at first, they both felt their feelings shifting from friendship to love. Akua's lively, adventurous spirit excited Kojo, and he found himself falling for her more deeply with each passing day. Likewise, Akua was captivated by Kojo's quiet strength and his steady, calming presence. Their connection felt faded, as though they had been meant to find each other. But everything changed one evening when the two of them, sitting beneath a large acacia tree in the village, began to share more personal stories about their families. It was a quiet night, the stars twinkling brightly in the clear sky, and the air was filled with the sound of distant drums from a nearby village celebration. As they sat side by side, Akua spoke more openly about her father, Kwame, and the life they had built in the city. Kojo listened closely as Akua described her father, his love for business, his determination to provide for her, and the struggles he had faced as a single parent. Something about Akua's description stirred a memory in Kojo. His mother, Afia, had rarely spoken of his father, but on the few occasions she had, she described a man who had once been a dreamer, a man who had loved business but had been broken by the hardships of life. curiosity piqued, Kojo shared his own story, telling Akua about his mother, Afia, and how she had raised him in the village alone after his father had left. He spoke of the faint memories he had of his father, memories of a tall, strong man who had once been full of hope but had disappeared from his life when he was still a baby. Akua's eyes widened as Kojo spoke, and a sense of dread began to settle in her stomach. The pieces of their stories began to fall into place, and with growing horror, they realized the truth. Their parents' names, the timeline of their separation, the details of their childhoods, it all lined up. They weren't just two people who had randomly met and fallen in love. They were brother and sister. Twins. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Neither of them could speak for what felt like an eternity, their minds reeling from the weight of the truth. Akua was the first to break the silence, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke. Kojo, we're related. Kojo could barely comprehend the words. His heart raced, his mind spinning as he tried to process the enormity of what they had discovered. How is this possible? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Fate had brought them together, but it had been cruel. The very person he had fallen in love with was his twin sister, the sibling he had never known. They sat in stunned silence, the night suddenly feeling cold and empty. The love that had blossomed between them now felt like a cruel twist of fate, a bond that should never have been. They had unknowingly fallen in love with their own sibling, and the shock of that realization was too much to bear. For days after the discovery, Kojo and Akua avoided each other, each grappling with the devastation of the truth. How could they have come so far, only to learn that their love was forbidden? How could they continue their relationship, knowing what they now knew? The connection they had felt so deeply, the bond that had drawn them together, now seemed like a bitter joke played by the universe. But as the days passed, and the initial shock began to fade, they realized that the story didn't have to end there. Yes, they had unknowingly fallen in love with each other, but now that they knew the truth, they could make things right. They couldn't continue the romantic relationship that had begun to grow between them, but they could still be a family. They could still bring their parents back together and heal the brokenness that had kept them apart for so long. Determined to reunite their parents, Kojo and Akua devised a plan. They believed that their parents, Afia and Kwame, had never stopped loving each other, even though life had driven them apart. Both were still single, and both carried the scars of their separation. The twins were convinced that if they could just get their parents to face each other again, to talk, to remember the love they had once shared, they could mend the broken pieces of their family. The first step was simple: arrange a surprise meeting between their parents. Kojo convinced Afia to come to Accra under the pretense that he needed her help with something important. Meanwhile, Akua told Kwame that she had a special day planned for him, a day that would bring back fond memories of their past. Both Afia and Kwame were suspicious, but neither could say no to their children. The twins brought their parents to the same festival in Accra where they had first met. It was a lively day, filled with music, dancing, and the vibrant colors of Ghanaian culture. Afia and Kwame arrived separately, each unaware that the other was coming, and when they finally saw each other among the crowd, their shock was palpable. At first, neither of them knew what to say. So many years had passed since they had last seen each other, and the pain of their separation still lingered in the air between them. But as the festival continued, Kojo and Akua nudged them toward each other, encouraging them to talk. Slowly, as the hours passed, Afia and Kwame began to open up. They reminisced about their days in the village, about the mango tree where they had first fallen in love, and about the life they had once dreamed of building together. There were moments of awkwardness, of course, but there were also moments of laughter and connection. The old wounds were still there, but the love that had once bound them together had never truly disappeared. As the day wore on, Kojo and Aqua gathered their parents beneath the shade of a large baobab tree, away from the noise of the festival. It was there, in the quiet of the afternoon, that they revealed the truth. The twins had found each other, and they knew they were siblings. Afia and Kwame were stunned by the revelation, their emotions a mix of shock, joy, and sorrow. How had they let so many years slip by without reuniting their children? Tears flowed as Afia embraced Aqua for the first time in 16 years, and Kwame held Kojo tightly, his heart full of regret for the years they had lost. In that moment, the family began to heal. The pain of the past hadn't been erased, but it was no longer a barrier. They had been given a second chance. Over the following months, Afia and Kwame slowly rebuilt their relationship. It wasn't easy. There were still unresolved feelings, and the years of separation had left scars that wouldn't heal overnight. But they were both committed to trying. They spent more time together, rekindling the love they had once shared, and they became closer as a family. Kojo and Aqua, though still grappling with the emotions of their discovery, found comfort in their new roles as siblings. The bond they had once mistaken for romance became something even deeper, a connection forged by fate and strengthened by their shared experience. Just as things seemed to be moving in the right direction, a final twist threatened to tear them apart once again. Kwame received a job offer that would take him far away, to another region of Ghana, where he could establish a new branch of his business. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, one that would secure a stable future for him and his family, but if he accepted, it would mean leaving Afia behind again. The decision weighed heavily on Kwame's heart. He had worked so hard to rebuild his relationship with Afia, and he didn't want to lose her again. But the job offer was tempting. It was everything he had once dreamed of, a chance to finally achieve the success he had always wanted. Afia, too, was torn. She had begun to open her heart to Kwame again, but the thought of him leaving, just when they had started to rebuild their family, filled her with fear. Could she go through the pain of separation again? Could their love survive the distance this time? Kwame spent many sleepless nights weighing his options. He could follow his ambition, take the job, and secure financial stability for his family, but at what cost? Or he could stay, remain by Afia's side, and continue to work on their relationship, choosing love over fortune. The decision felt impossible. One evening, as the sun set over the village, casting a golden glow over the fields, Afia and Kwame met beneath the old mango tree where they had once shared their dreams as young lovers. It was a place filled with memories, both joyful and painful. As they sat together under the tree, the silence between them spoke volumes. Finally, Afia broke the silence. "Kwame," she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion, "I won't stand in the way of your dreams. If you want to take the job, you should go. You've always wanted more for yourself, and I understand that. But I need to know one thing. Are we part of that dream? Or is this the end for us?" Kwame looked at her, the weight of his decision heavy on his heart. He realized, in that moment, that all the wealth and success in the world meant nothing if it meant losing Afia again. He had spent years chasing after something he thought would make him happy, but what he truly wanted had been right in front of him all along. Afia, Kojo, and Aqua. They were his true fortune. The family he had almost lost was what mattered most. "I can't lose you again, Afia," Kwame said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've spent so many years trying to fix things by running after opportunities, but what I've realized is that I already have everything I need. You, Kojo, Akua, you are my family, and I want to be here with you. No job, no amount of money, could ever replace that." Tears filled Afia's eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. The man she had fallen in love with all those years ago was still there, and now he had chosen her. He had chosen them. Kwame made his decision that night. He turned down the job offer, choosing to stay in the village, where he could continue to build a life with Afia and their children. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, united as a family. In the months that followed, Afia and Kwame's relationship blossomed once more. They rebuilt their lives together, not just as co-parents, but as partners who had overcome the odds. They opened a small business in the village, combining Afia's teaching and weaving skills with Kwame's business acumen. The venture brought them closer, and soon, the village began to talk about them not as the couple who had once fallen apart, but as the family who had risen from the ashes of their past. Kojo and Akua, now fully aware of their bond as siblings, embraced their new roles in each other's lives. Though their romantic connection had ended, their love for each other remained, transformed into something deeper and more enduring. They supported one another through the challenges of growing up, sharing their dreams and ambitions just as they had before, but now as brother and sister. They often joked about how fate had brought them together in such a strange and unexpected way, but they were grateful for it nonetheless. The village, once filled with whispers of doubt and gossip, now looked at Afia and Kwame with admiration. They had defied the odds, rebuilt their love, and reunited their family. Their story became one of resilience, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. One evening, a year after Kwame had decided to stay, the family gathered under the mango tree, the same tree that had witnessed their youthful love, their separation, and now their reunion. The air was warm, and the sky was painted with the soft hues of the setting sun. Kojo and Akua sat side by side, laughing and teasing each other, while Afia and Kwame sat quietly, holding hands, their hearts full of peace. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Afia leaned her head on Kwame's shoulder and smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said softly. Kwame nodded, his heart full. "We have, and I wouldn't change a thing." The future, though uncertain, was no longer something to fear. They had weathered the storms, faced their challenges, and come out stronger on the other side. Together, they had created a new story, one filled with love, hope, and the bonds of family that could never be broken. As they sat together beneath the mango tree, the cool breeze carrying the distant sounds of the village, Kwame looked at his family and smiled. For the first time in years, he felt whole. He had learned that life was not about the wealth or success one could achieve, but about the people who stood by you, even in the darkest of times. And in that moment, surrounded by the people he loved most, Kwame knew that he had found his true fortune. The family's journey had come full circle, and though the road ahead would have its challenges, they would face it together, bound by the unshakable love that had always been their greatest strength. The end. Did you enjoy this story? Kindly let me know in the comments section, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting African folk tales. Bye, friends. See you next time.